Hello, everyone, and welcome to join my session today. Me, Fettah Mohamed from Morocco. I'm a teacher of English and an ISA International Coordinator. I am here to take part in this program and also share my own knowledge and views with a large audience at the international level via such online platform of the International Internship University. So, before I start talking about my own topic of today's session, let me first introduce the International Internship University so as to have an idea about it. The International Internship University is the world's first internship based virtual university building a better and brighter future for all young learners, and it is committed to provide quality, accessible, affordable, skill-based, and location-independent education to learners across the world. It is providing access to more than 1,000 courses and internships to the e-learners across the globe. With the team of high caliber and experienced global educators, it has been accredited and affiliated with the World Education Organization and International Accreditation Organization and collaborated with all the world's top universities and educational institutions through the platform of massive open online courses. It also provides various certificates and diploma courses, and the co-founder of IIU, or the International Internship University, is Mr. Piashi Pandit. So this is a brief idea about the International Internship University, and in terms of my topic is comparisons. Making comparisons between people in different real situations. So my discussion or my topic will be like a journey through which you are taken to certain real life situations where you have to think more and be aware of their meaning and their influence on your personality and your life as a whole. So let me share the screen. Right, so as you see, so the topic is comparisons, and I'm going to focus on 4 points. And of course, to compare and contrast between people concerning these points. The first one is self-control. So how people really control, can or can't control themselves. Then move to talk about success and failure, the way people perceive failure and think about it, and how do they deal with the failure and so on. The third point is talking about decision making. So what are the criteria? What are the factors that must be taken into consideration before making a final decision? And the fourth point is correcting others. So when we want to correct others, so what should be taken into consideration as well? What are the means whereby we can correct others and so on? Right, so let's start. So as you see, so let's start with self-control. It is taken for granted that your ability to control your own thoughts, emotions, and actions has a huge impact on your own choices and decisions. But the question which is the most frequently reported among people is what follows. Why do most people fail to control themselves and seem to have ambivalent attitudes and reactions? And this photo presented to you gives an example to the main reason why people look hesitant or fail to control themselves. It clarifies to what extent your ability to manage such conflict between your heart and your brain, um, as well as the way you deal with the interaction between them, determines your final possession. And as it is presented, there are three different possessions. For example, we have in the first possession or the first situation. So in the first one is when you use your brain to think of what to do or to say without any reference to your feelings. The second one is when your emotions and feelings overwhelm your brain and so govern your way of thinking. And people in this case have less self control. They act and react without thinking deeply. They only take quick decisions depending on their own feelings and emotions. The third situation is when you try to balance between your heart and your brain. This means to think before you act or react and to take into consideration your positive or negative feelings before taking your final decision or choice. And of course, this is the last thing to ask or to raise concerning self-control is which one is the best? Is it the first situation or the second or the third? Is it to give power to my brain or to give power to my heart or try to balance between my heart and my brain? Of course, when we speak about this situation to give you power to your brain, so in these kind of people are known by using their brain in everything. So they exclude their emotions from any decision, any choice, and so on. And in some cases, when we have these people who behave this way or who think this way, so we may have these people may have troubles with others in certain specific situations. For the second situation is when you give power to your heart. So these people are known by depending on their feelings and emotions in order to express their own opinions or judgments. And most of the time, this kind of people are really exploited by others, or they really have problems in terms of taking the right decision because uh, their choices, when they are based on feelings and emotions, so sometimes they are victims and so on. For the third situation is to balance between your heart and brain, and maybe this one is the best thing to follow, is the best example to follow, is when you try to balance between your heart and your feelings, is within your heart and your brain, sorry. So it depends on the circumstances, it depends on the situation or the issue that you are dealing with and so on. So when you have this ability to balance between your heart and your brain, so maybe this is the best process, the best thing, the best way whereby you can deal with you deal with this idea of self-control. So you can control yourself whenever you are aware of your feelings and aware of your thoughts, and then you try to balance between the two. The second thing to discuss in this meeting is success and failure. And it is common that people find it difficult or people think that failure is the opposite of success. They believe that failure means nothing to be done or no other direction to be taken. So it represents for them a final statement for disappearance and collapse. However, there are other people who think that failure is a part of their failure or their future success. So they don't think that failure is a final statement for disappearance or collapse, but rather they think that failure it is a part of their future success. People think that failure is a positive signal for general evaluation and constructive criticism. They consider failure a step in the process of success where they have to reflect on what they have done. Therefore, there are three different cases which show how people think and deal with failure as they are presented in this photo that we have shown on the screen. In the first situation, we have people who fear from failure and they prefer to stay where they are without taking any risk simply because they fear to fail. In the second situation, we have an example to people who fail, who fail but they don't learn from their failure. So they keep moving from one failure to another without any change in their current situation. In the third situation, we have an example to people who fail, but they keep moving forward looking for success. They even invest in their failure for their future success. But the question to raise here is as follows. How do these people live in these three situations? For example, like it is shown in this photo, when you fear from failure. So when you fear from failure, so everything that comes to you, so you think of it differently and you try to complicate things. Like here, moving from A to B, it can be as simple as it is shown in the second example, but when you fear from failure, it becomes so complicated, it becomes so difficult, and so on. So this is real example to compare between people who don't fear from failure and take risk in order for the sake of success, while others fear from failure and they stay or keep themselves where they are. The second situation is when you make your failure one day for every day. And this happens to people really who have knowledge, who have skills, who are well educated, and so on, but they fail. So, why do they fail? They fail because these people, uh, all the time, when they fail, they just blame others for their failure. So they just give excuses to their failure, but they never have this kind of self-criticism, or they try to learn from their mistakes. So this kind of people all the time move from one failure to another because they don't learn from their failure. They just keep put or blaming others for their own failure and so on. In the third situation, so this example is the best to share and to explain this case, is when you invest in your failure. So when you are broken, when you have problems, when you fail, and so on, so it doesn't mean that it is an end, but it means that it is a new beginning. It is a new direction to take. It is a new form to have. It is time for for change towards another direction, towards something better, and so on. But it's not to think of it to be an end. And this is why, as it was presented before, that there are some people who invest in their failure. It's like here in this example number three. So you have someone who invests in his own failure to move forward, looking for success. Right. So as a conclusion, so talking about success and failure for people and how people deal with failure and success, I can say to conclude that we have to bear in mind that people who succeed in their life and make their dreams come true are only those who invest in their failure for the success or future success. Those who learn from their past mistakes to change their choices or direction towards the right way. Right? So this is as a conclusion that we have to abide by whenever we think of success and failure. And maybe it can be taken as an example whenever we want to compare contrast between the way people think of success and failure. Next, move to speak about decision making. It is common that people find it difficult to make decision because there isn't only one effective decision making process that one may follow for every time and for every situation. This is why people use different means whereby they try to guide themselves to the right decision. Okay? For example, some people prefer to ask for advice and discuss their issues with different people. The result, like for example, in this case, so asking uh, different people for their own advice and or suggestion or whatsoever. The result is like this. So you have a collection of attitudes, suggestions, and judgments that differ from one person to another. Because when you ask people, so people belong to different fields, to different social class, to different kind of work, and so on. And so it is expected to collect or to get from them different views depending on their own background and way of thinking. And that's why you have to be aware of this. That's when you get this collection of ideas, of information, of judgment, or whatsoever. So at that time, you have to be aware of this and you have to be selective. This means you have to choose the right one, the best one, or things that really are useful for you, are helpful for you. Okay? But not to follow everyone or to adopt everything. So you have to be very selective when dealing with this situation, and this is especially for people who prefer to ask for advice and so on, to ask people, others, to ask others for their own attitudes and so on. So in this case, you have to be aware of this situation. The second situation, on the other side, other people prefer to keep their problems secret. And so they don't like to tell others. So they just try to find solutions by themselves. They try to deal with their problems by themselves. Okay? But in this case, once again, when we want to have, for example, when we choose this kind of um, decision making process, so we have to bear in mind that that it's not maybe sometimes it's not workable because for some issues, for some problems, it is maybe it's helpful to depend on your own capabilities and ability to find out solutions to your problems. But in some other cases, it may be somehow difficult to isolate yourself and you just spend the whole time thinking alone by yourself about your problems and how to find solutions and how to deal with things and so on. Okay? And of course, the question to mention here in this situation of decision making um, is how to deal with or um, how can people make the right decision in both cases, because we have two contradictory situations. So how people can really deal with these situations, either when they choose to ask other people for or seek advice from other people, or when they want to depend on themselves and find solutions by themselves. And of course, the answer to this, if you may ask, which one is better? So there is no single answer for every situation. So it depends on the problem, it depends on the situation or the circumstances. But in every situation, you have to be careful and you should know how to deal with these information that you collect from others, or even when you want to be or when you want to depend on yourself. So you have to be aware that you can't do that for in every problem and in every situation. So you have to be very careful about that. And that's why I come to share some pieces of advice for making the right decision. So the first one is plan how to tell others about your issues. And this is very important. If I want to seek advice from others, so I should have, I should have a plan. I should plan for telling people about my issues and ask for their opinions and attitudes in order to make a decision by the end. The second thing is to be selective in what you get from others. Okay? I have to be selective. I have to choose what is really helpful for me. And I should also be selective in terms of people I ask. So when I have a problem, when I have an issue, when I have something that I want to make a decision in it. So I should choose people, or I should go back to people who are really who can really help, who can really do something in terms of my issue or my problem, but not to ask anyone and seek advice from anyone. The third thing is give yourself time before you decide. So you should give yourself time and also evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of your decision. So why not put a list and you say that these are the advantages and these are the disadvantages of my decision. So at that time, be sure that you may have new conclusions whereby you can have some changes in your decision and so on, or at least to be aware of things that may happen then. And that's why you have also to consider all the possibilities after making your decision. You think of what will happen then after making your decision. So these are really good pieces of advice that you can follow or you can abide by whenever you want to make decision, and especially when talking about hard decisions. The last point to discuss or to talk about in my session is correcting others. It is true that correcting someone for a good reason remains a much desired state for everyone. However, correcting others for minor things or mistakes that are not important can lead to a negative feedback. Meantime, the way you correct others, which really matters. Why? Because the way you try to convince others to correct their mistakes is much more important and much more helpful to achieve your objective. Meantime, the way you correct others, or this means that correcting others doesn't need only to be sure that they need your help or advice, but also to know the right way and the right means by which you can do this task. Okay? For example, having a common objective. So, if I want to correct others, I must be sure that there are common objectives. You can't correct others who are different to your own objectives. You can correct only those with whom you share common objectives. And this is very, very important. Why? Because if there is no common objective, so your correction will be like this, is talking and talking for nothing. You just waste your time and energy in talking about something that is not that is or that is useless, right? But when you have common objective, like what is presented in this photo on the left side of the screen, so you see that when there is a common objective, when there is things in common, so at that time correction can be beneficial, useful, and also workable. Something else, correct people without offense. So if I want to correct others, I should bear in mind that I have to correct them, but without offense, without humiliation. Because if I try to start with offense and humiliation, be sure that I can't reach the final objective or the ultimate objective of my attempt, which is correcting others. Because in this case, when I have this offense, when I humiliate people and so on, so at that time people don't like to listen, don't like to follow, even if I may tell them the truth and they know that it is real or truth, but they don't accept it to be said by me. Why? Because the way I correct these people is not correct. So I cannot correct something with an incorrect way. So I have to be careful about this. And if I want to correct people, I should avoid offense or humiliation. The something else is correct people who listen to you. And this means that if you want to correct people, you have to choose people whom you think they like to talk. They like to talk with you. They like to listen to you. They really like these, or they really need this correction. You can't just correct anyone and for everything. So we have to correct people who listen to you, people who really need your help for correction. Because when we have this interest, so your correction becomes much more constructive and much more beneficial. Something else, if I want to correct others, so I have to bear in mind that I should correct others um, um, depending on their own, or after I understand their own views and situation. I cannot just come and correct others depending or from a vantage position or depending only on my own background, on my own way of thinking, and so on. So the first thing for correcting others is to understand the others from their own possession. Try to understand them. It's like in this case, for example, to trying to correct the other that this is 6 to 9 is in vain, because if you put yourself in every situation, so you believe that it is as it was believed by the previous one. If you put yourself in the person dressing in blue t-shirt, so you believe that this is 9. And if you put yourself in the possession of this person dressing in the orange color, you believe that this is 6. Okay? So if you put yourself in the possession of 6 and try to convince the other in the position of 9 that this is 6, so this is all in vain, right? So this is not the right way to correct others. If I want to correct others, I should put myself in their position. I try to understand them. I try to understand their problem. I try to know the situation first, and then I can come up with my own views and solutions, suggestions, or whatsoever. But if I just come and look at things from a vantage position, so at that time my correction will be really irrelevant and doesn't really reflect the reality of things. Meantime, I have to bear in mind that we don't have only one absolute truth. If I try to correct others concerning a given point, I have to bear in mind that my suggestion or my judgment or whatsoever is just one among others that can be taken into practice or into consideration. Okay? For example, like in this case, like in these photos, so we have when you look at the mountains from a distance, so this is how they look like. And at that time, you believe that this is a fact, that the mountains, they are round and the summit look sharp and so on. So you believe in this from a distance. But when you reach the summits of these mountains, so things become totally different. And this is also another truth that you have to believe and you can't deny. So this means what? Either you are from a distance, this is a real fact, or you are, or when you reach the summit of these mountains, so this is also another fact. So we have two facts, maybe there are contrasting facts, but I have to believe in them when I am in the right position. If I am from a distance, so this is how it looks like. And I have to believe that this is how it looks like. And I cannot deny so. And when I reach the summit of these mountains, so this is how the mountains look like. And they have to believe in this fact and not to say, no, they are round or they have sharp summits and so on and so forth. Something else or another example. It's like when we speak about this pencil. So when we have a pencil or heavy stick half merged in water, for example, or like in this case, we have a pencil. So it looks like this. It looks bent. It looks as if it is broken. And in both cases, so this is true. This is reality that we have to believe. So if it looks like this, when I put it half merged in water, so this is a fact. When I take it out of water and look at it to be straight, so this is a fact. So I have to bear in mind that there is no one absolute facts, but we have different facts. We have different interpretations. We have different explanations, and we have different approaches maybe to the same problem, to the same issue, to the same mistake. So whenever I want to correct others, so I have to bear in mind this, that my own suggestion or interpretation or approach is just one example. It is just one color among the colors of the rainbow. So this is how I can really make my own correction more helpful and more useful and beneficial for others. And ultimately, um, there are certain things that I may mention at the end when we speak about correcting others. So we have to bear in mind that correcting someone is an offer, but not a duty which you are obliged to fulfill. Okay? Because if you keep correcting everyone's mistakes, this means that you are among those who feel better only when they make themselves superior to the others. And that's why I said before, you should correct others who are really in need of your correction. It's not to keep or to insist on correcting others, maybe others who don't like even to listen to you, maybe others who don't like this correction and so on. So I have to correct only those who are really in need, only those who really who really listen to me and so on. Also, bearing in mind that planning for what you need to correct, how to correct, and to whom you need to take uh, or to have for correction must be the first things to be taken into consideration in your attempt to correct others. So these are three things very important before you start correcting others. So you have to put them first and try to find the right solutions and try to take them into account before starting your correction. The third point is to bear in mind that you can't correct someone in the right way if you look at his or her problem from a vantage position. And this is what I explained. I explained before when we talked about the number 6 or 9. So I have to put myself in the position of the person I want to correct. I try to understand this person's views, this person's opinion, and so on. And then I try to find the right solutions, the right correction for the mistakes of this person and so on. Right. So generally speaking, so as a conclusion to this today's session about comparisons, to compare between uh, people, the way people act and react concerning different points is like uh, self-control, decision-making, success and failure, correcting others, and so on. Um, and I hope that this brief presentation was fruitful and precise and concise for the sake of making you aware of these things for to be taken into account in the future. So that's all, and thank you for your listening.